Lu Shu is a frail teenager with an iron will. After losing his parents, he enrolls in a prestigious high school while working for a living and looking after his adoptive sister, Xiaoyu Lu. However, Lu Shu's quiet life abruptly changes when a car accident awakens his latent cultivation of God's powers. Now cured of his physical weakness, he decides to hide his newfound abilities, as the art of cultivation is still shrouded in mystery and the fate of cultivators uncertain. Meanwhile, Tianluo Di Wang, the international foundation responsible for monitoring the cultivators, sets its plans in motion. Under the impetus of their member Shi Fei, a special cultivation training group is established in Lu Shu's high school. Although Lu Shu is forced to join the program, he is determined to hide the nature of his fearsome power, for his cultivation draws from an unlimited resource, the negative emotions of others brought about by his actions. On a rainy night, a woman runs desperately, holding a baby in her arms. Two people are chasing her, and she can barely keep going. She manages to hide near a house and begins to rock the baby to calm it down. Suddenly, the owner of the house comes out, having heard the noise. Seeing the woman and the baby, she invites them inside to protect the little one from the rain. The woman, exhausted and with a worried look, agrees. Before entering, she hands the baby to the lady, saying she's going to buy medicine and will be back soon. However, the baby's mother disappears without a trace, leaving the child to its new fate. 18 years have passed since that night, and now we find ourselves at the Sea's Fireworks Festival. A girl named Lu Xiaoyu asks her older brother Lu Shu to buy her some tanghulu caramelized fruits that she loves. Lu Shu, our protagonist, is the baby who was abandoned that night, and he still carries the same walnut necklace he had then. Although Lu Shu is quite careful with money, he eventually gives in to his sister's wishes and buys the sweets. As they enjoy the festival, they hear people talking about a man who supposedly lifted more than 2,000 pounds. Some believe he's a superhuman, while others think he's a fraud. Curious, the siblings approach a street performance where a man is breathing fire. However, due to their height, they can't see well. Lu Xiaoyu asks her brother to lift her onto his shoulders, but Lu Shu can't hold her up for long and quickly sets her down, pushing her forward so she can get a better view. During the performance, something strange happens to Lu Shu. He has a vision of a sword and feels energy emanating from his necklace. Surprised and confused, he wonders if he's just experienced something supernatural. After the show, Lu Xiaoyu convinces her brother to sneak behind the stage and ask the man about his tricks. They manage to slip in, but what they discover is far more unsettling than they expected. They see several men shooting at the performers, causing the noise to alert the attackers to their presence. Lu Shu, quick-witted, lies, saying they were looking for the bathroom. The men, who claim to be firefighters, assure them that the performance was not authorized. Although Lu Shu pretends to believe them, he knows something dark is happening and decides to leave with his sister. On their way home, they encounter a young man named Zhi Wei, who asks why they were behind the stage. However, the siblings decide to ignore him and move on. Lu Shu suspects that those men are hurting the performers to steal their powers. Worried, he asks Lu Xiaoyu what she would do if there were more people with supernatural abilities in the world. She responds with total determination, saying she would become stronger to protect him, firmly believing that her brother will awaken a special power as long as he keeps feeding her in return. When they get back home, they run into the woman who took care of Lu Shu years ago. She mentions that her uncle is still the same, accustomed to his situation. Lu Xiaoyu interrupts her, calling her Aunt Lin, while the latter prepares some medicine. However, Lu Shu is in a hurry to leave, sensing that something important is about to happen. That night, while Lu Xiaoyu watches the news about people gaining powers, Lu Shu heads to the kitchen to make noodles for dinner, only to discover that they've run out. Although his sister suggests buying instant noodles, he refuses, joking about using the walnut necklace to cook them. Finally, he decides to go out to buy the noodles. Walking down the street, he notices that it's snowing, and his mind fills with memories of his time in the orphanage, where other children mocked him. Despite everything, he always had Lu Xiaoyu by his side, even when they both escaped from the orphanage to be together. As he crosses the road, a truck hits him. In that moment, he hears his mother's song and feels his necklace begin to glow. Everything becomes confusing, and when he wakes up, he is uninjured. Lu Shu believes he has awakened an unusual power, and the truck driver, frightened, flees without offering help. After buying the noodles, Lu Shu returns home, startling the cashier with his bloodstained appearance. When he arrives, he tells Lu Xiaoyu what happened. She, instead of worrying, asks if the truck is okay, which makes him laugh despite everything. Later in his room, a menu appears in the air similar to a video game interface, showing the names of the people he has scared, awarding him points. Curious, he presses a button and wins a prize wheel, receiving a purification fruit that resembles an apple. As he bites into it, he feels a glow run through his body, filling him with energy. Although he is unsuccessful in subsequent attempts, he perseveres and finally wins a scroll containing his mother's song. As he sings the song, a light envelops him, transporting him to a different universe. However, he continues talking to Xiaoyu as if he were still in his room. Something has changed within him, and he knows that his life will never be the same again. After eating, a strange feeling overwhelms him, and he decides to investigate a fire he saw on the news. When he arrives at the scene, he sees the same men who shot at the performers, realizing it's not safe to get close to them. As Lu Shu tries to escape from this dangerous situation, he cleverly avoids trouble by claiming that he was looking for dried radishes. The men, finding nothing suspicious, assume he's just an ordinary person and let him go. However, Lu Shu notices something strange. He can sense the presence of other people, but they couldn't detect him. Just as Lu Shu is about to tell Xiaoyu what's happening, something surprising occurs. A person falls into their garden from the sky. The siblings, intrigued and slightly worried, secretly investigate. This unexpected event fills Lu Shu with negative emotions, which, to his surprise, grant him more points in his mysterious skill system. As they approach, they discover that the fallen person is the fire performer they had seen earlier, leading Lu Shu to suspect that he has been manipulated to create the flames he displays. Xiaoyu, ever curious, asks what they should do with the fallen man. Lu Shu, calculating as always, suggests ignoring him to avoid attracting more attention, which annoys the man, and much to Lu Shu's delight, earns him even more points. The protagonist realizes that the performer is only pretending to be unconscious, so he decides to provoke him further to accumulate additional points. When the man stands up and attempts to use his firepower, he fails miserably. Even when he tries to burn a simple shoe, the flame extinguishes immediately. Frustrated and defeated, the man asks to leave, but Lu Shu doesn't miss the chance to humiliate him a little more, mocking his lack of strength and questioning whether he'll ever awaken a real superpower. Xiaoyu, always skeptical, doesn't believe her brother has awakened a true power. Though the subject is soon forgotten, Lu Shu reflects on his situation and explores the menu in his mind, where he discovers an item in his inventory that can materialize when touched. Determined to better understand his abilities, he consumes the item and is instantly transported to a universe where he can feel his power growing within him. When he finally awakens, he realizes that he has gained immense strength. The next day, Xiaoyu teases him, mentioning that his friends are meeting up without him. Lu Shu explains that he doesn't have the money to join them, but he cleverly manages to chat with the group and intentionally infuriates them, earning more points. Annoyed, Xiaoyu sends him to sell eggs to make some money. While selling eggs, Lu Shu notices that the other vendors are ignoring him. An experienced vendor advises him not to worry about the others. Shortly after, several classmates, including a couple of bullies, approach him. With his wit, Lu Shu turns the situation to his advantage, letting the class monitor buy all the eggs. However, the monitor, trying to avoid payment, attempts to use a credit card, knowing that Lu Shu only accepts cash. Fortunately, a girl steps in and lends money to the monitor, leaving the boys embarrassed. Back in class, one of his classmates mentions a video showing the person responsible for a recent fire, but Lu Shu ignores it and decides to watch another video about the levels of awakened individuals, ranging from A to F, with F being the lowest level. After watching it, Lu Shu, always on the lookout for more points, jokes that someone has awakened a power, provoking reactions that boost his point counter. However, the atmosphere at school becomes tense when a classmate bursts into the room, announcing an incident in the 7th class, where people are observing objects scattered across the floor. When he arrives at the scene, Lu Shu senses an increase in negative energy and discovers that a student had argued with a teacher and threw a desk with such force that it was destroyed. Suspecting that the student might be on the terrace, Lu Shu quickly runs there. On the terrace, the protagonist encounters a striking scene. The student is holding the teacher by the neck, threatening to throw him off the edge. Instead of panicking, Lu Shu sees this as an opportunity to earn more points. With cold calculation, he lists all the consequences the student will face if he goes through with it. This distraction gives others enough time to capture the student and rescue the teacher. Later, when he returns to the classroom, he finds that many students are wearing masks for the exams, but determined to stand out, he ends up being the first to complete the test. Upon returning home, Lu Shu sees Ji Wei talking to Aunt Mei, warning her not to open the door to strangers. Ji Wei mentions a task they might lose, but Lu Shu, always calculating, decides to ignore the situation. When he enters the house, he's met with a more urgent problem. Xiaoyu is sick with a fever. Worried, Lu Shu remembers the fruit he won from the wheel in his menu. After several attempts, he finally wins one and gives it to Xiaoyu, who recovers instantly. Although she initially thinks Lu Shu is playing a joke on her, he gives her more fruit, which reassures her. The next day, Lu Shu's classmates discuss how the troublemaker from the previous day received only a minimal punishment. Outraged, they decide to boycott their final exams, advocating for a fairer judgment. However, just as classes are about to begin, a group of hooded men burst into the school, assessing the students with special abilities. To everyone's surprise, they call out Lu Shu's name, leaving his classmates bewildered. Meanwhile, elsewhere, a powerful man is confronted by a hooded figure who strikes the last descendant of Illa. Lu Shu prepares for what is to come, while the man sends his subordinates to stop the hooded figure, though they fail. At school, the students' attention is drawn to an unusual activity. Several hooded men are transporting boxes into the institution. Meanwhile, in Lu Shu's class, a new student named Zhang Shudi is introduced. Without any apparent reason, Lu Shu's deskmate offers her seat to the newcomer, saying she no longer wants to sit next to Lu Shu. The atmosphere becomes tense as the classmates begin to praise the new arrival, assuming she's a girl. But to everyone's surprise, the new student introduces himself as Jiang Shui and clarifies that he is a boy. Despite the confusion, Lu Shu seizes the opportunity to ask awkward questions in order to earn more points in his mysterious system. That same night, Lu Shu heads to a building where some of his selected classmates have gathered. One of the hooded men named Xi Fi, who turns out to be the same person he saw earlier, appears and explains that he has summoned them to learn how to cultivate themselves. He begins the lesson by asking if they know about the sodium-potassium alloy. Seeing that no one does, he simplifies the question, asking if they know what sodium is. A classmate attempts to answer, but the man asks Lu Shu to respond instead. Surprised, Lu Shu takes the opportunity to earn more points, though he feels a bit embarrassed in the process. The hooded man proceeds to explain that the alloy is a type of metallic liquid that can detect the interaction between human blood and the energy of heaven and earth, known as a student's quality. This process reveals the individual's special abilities, taking on a specific color according to each person's power. After the class, a group of students mutter negative comments about Lu Shu, insinuating that he was only admitted by force due to his low level. However, Jiang Shui encourages him, saying that success requires effort and perseverance. Lu Shu, always with a carefree attitude, replies that he doesn't care what they say. Upon arriving home, Lu Shu finds Xiaoyu enjoying a large meal, eating special fruits that strengthen her. Suddenly, a menu appears in Lu Shu's mind, indicating that his purification has reached maximum power. Excited, he unlocks an ability that allows him to generate stinky tofu, which he gives to Xiaoyu. After numerous attempts to summon more tofu, he finally draws a card that, when it touches Xiaoyu, stops time and opens a hole in the sky. Xiaoyu is transported into space, where she eventually wakes up. Later, Lu Shu has a brilliant idea to sell the stinky tofu to make money. The next day, the protagonist encounters a man practicing fencing. The man offers to teach him, but with his goal clear, Lu Shu declines and continues on his way to the town square. There, he successfully sells all of his stinky tofu before heading to school. This routine becomes his daily life, selling tofu in the morning and excelling in his classes. One night at home, a mysterious light appears before him and transports him to an unknown universe. In that place, Lu Shu feels a power emanating from his body, though he doesn't know how to control it. Suddenly, a purple light sword appears, which Lu Shu wields effortlessly. Despite this, he realizes that using the sword in his reality exhausts him considerably. However, he understands that if he can master this power, he will become a true genius. The next day at school, Lu Shu's classmates discuss the Awakened, a popular topic on an official forum. Jiang Shui tells Lu Shu about 3 awakened individuals who teamed up to rob the central bank. Before he can respond, the class monitor interrupts, suggesting they should join his father's organization to improve the low quality of life in their city. He hints that Lu Shu is poor, which provokes Lu Shu's anger and earns him more points. That same night, during the cultivation class, Jiang Shui reveals to Lu Shu that the teacher possesses a special stone that helps them cultivate. When they receive their final grades for the stone course, the teacher shows them how to form a connection with it to multiply their strength tenfold. At home, Lu Shu attempts to connect his stone with the sword but fails. Frustrated, he begins to doubt the effectiveness of the teacher's method, though he doesn't know how to express his doubts. The next day, Lu Shu once again sees the man practicing with his sword. When the man approaches him, Lu Shu quickly distances himself, avoiding the offer to be taught. At school, Lu Shu asks Jiang Shui how he managed to cultivate his stone. Jiang Shui explains that it took him 2 hours of intense concentration and suggests that Lu Shu focus on his physical power. Surprised by Jiang Shui's wisdom, Lu Shu leaves, feeling slightly embarrassed. Later in class, the class leader displays his superior strength, justifying it as his natural power. He challenges Lu Shu to a strength competition, and to everyone's surprise, Lu Shu wins easily, leaving the leader humiliated. During lunch, Lu Shu is eating stinky tofu when Jiang Shui approaches him, mentioning that he has heard rumors about Lu Shu being one of the Awakened. However, Lu Shu brushes it off, saying that his new strength is due to his morning exercises. Worried, Zhang Shui suggests informing the teacher, thinking it might help with cultivating the stone. However, Lu Shu suspects that the teacher is part of a secret department and that it might be a trap to capture the Awakened. That night, hooded figures approach Lu Shu's neighborhood. One of them shows up at the door of the man who wields the sword, introducing himself as Nai Ting, while the man introduces himself as Lai. Nai Ting explains that he needs Lai to join his group due to the ongoing wars and his role as the last successor. However, Lai refuses, stating that they cannot control any country and would be easily defeated. Resigned, Nai Ting hopes that their next meeting will not be as enemies, and as he leaves, he notices Lu Shu watching him from the window. Xiaoyu, concerned, asks Lu Shu if he knows who that man is, but Lu Shu only replies that he's a powerful level B. The next day, Lu Shu watches Li training with his sword and finally expresses his desire to learn. Surprised, Li Lei assures him that he will help if he encounters difficulties. Determined to grow stronger, Lu Shu calls his sister, and the two prepare to practice together at Lai's house in the afternoons. With each passing day, Lu Shu feels he's getting closer to discovering his true potential, but he also knows that the dangers he faces are growing greater. At school, Zhang Shui comments on 3 awakened individuals who have joined forces to commit a series of crimes. Lu Shu, the protagonist, receives notifications that he has earned points due to the anger he has provoked in others. After class, while heading home, he overhears a conversation that leaves him thoughtful. His classmate Cao Qingji has successfully connected with her stone and developed such powerful cultivation that she has become the first to achieve it. On his way, Lu Shu encounters Xiaoyu discussing a maths problem with Mr. Lai. Showing his big brother attitude, Lu Shu suggests that in the future, Mr. Lai could help her with her homework. Mr. Lai, a man of few words but great wisdom, nods and then tells Lu Shu that it's time to begin his training. Initially, Mr. Lai suggests using scrap materials to start, but Lu Shu, with growing determination, insists on mastering the connection between his stone and his cultivation. Seeing the fervor in Lu Shu, Mr. Lai mentions Sheikh Xu Jin, a legendary cultivator who mastered the ability by learning to control a sword. Inspired by this story, Lu Shu grabs a 300-kilogram weight and, to his surprise, finds it incredibly light, revealing that he is awakened and that his strength has significantly increased as a result. With the intention of teaching him something more advanced, Mr. Lai draws out a blade that ignites with blue flames and tells Lu Shu that he will learn to use the burning blade. With a single movement, Mr. Lai cuts through a wall, demonstrating the sword's power, and explains to Lu Shu that he still has much to learn. From that moment on, an intense training regime begins where Lu Shu, with every move, feels more connected to his inner strength. That night, as Lu Shu recovers from the exhausting training, Mr. Lai shares a deeper lesson with him. He explains that the most powerful person is not necessarily the strongest physically, but the one who is willing to take on great responsibilities. He asks Lu Shu if he is prepared to accept such burdens, but Lu Shu, aware of the responsibilities he already carries, declines, though he expresses gratitude for the lesson. Understanding, Mr. Lai assures him that he will continue teaching him, but under a very personal condition that he keeps secret. The next day, Auntie is chatting with Mr. Lai, who seems to be patiently teaching her maths. During their conversation, a mysterious man named Sheikh Xu Jin appears before Lu Shu, catching his attention. Later, as he follows his routine, Lu Shu notices someone approaching Mr. Lai and Xiaoyu, causing him to rush out of school to find them. He finds Mr. Lai talking with Sheikh Xu Jin, who suggests that the teacher join his group. However, true to his nature, Mr. Lai refuses, prompting Sheikh Xu Jin to leave, leaving a tense atmosphere in his wake. After Sheikh Xu Jin's departure, Mr. Lai hands Lu Shu some vials containing max, a substance designed to help determine the qualities of cultivators. Back at home, Lu Shu analyzes his level, noticing that his quality changes to black, which initially leads him to think he has reached the highest level. However, the quality changes again, resembling a star map, leaving him perplexed and making him question whether he is on a higher level than he initially believed. Later, as he leaves home, Lu Shu crosses paths with Mr. Lai once more, who, with an enigmatic air, informs him that he has reached an advanced level. With a curious glance, Mr. Lai walks away, leaving Lu Shu deep in thought. That night in his room, Lu Shu enters a state of hypnosis, advancing to the next level of the star and gaining the power of regeneration, an achievement that fills him with awe. Meanwhile, in the middle of the night, Xiaoyu dreams that she is thrown into a black hole. Awakened by her agitation, Lu Shu enters her room, concerned about her strange behavior. Xiaoyu, coming out of the trance, explains that she has passed the first level of the star. Curious to know more, she asks Lu Shu about his specialization, and Xiaoyu reveals that she can summon and control animals. To demonstrate, she first summons a dead ant and then a bird in the garden, recalling that she acquired this power when the scroll was opened that day. Xiaoyu expresses her desire to practice with larger animals, so Lu Shu takes her to see Pippin, a peculiar pig they had seen before. However, thinking that Lu Shu is playing a prank on her, Xiaoyu becomes angry. Back home, Xiaoyu successfully summons the pig, but Lu Shu, to test the animal's reaction, knocks it down and injures it, confirming that it reacts like a real pig. Nevertheless, Lu Shu uses his power to summon the sword, scaring the pig and eliminating it, which allows him to advance another level, though at the cost of enraging Xiaoyu. That night, the news reports more deaths related to awakened criminals, increasing concern in the city. During dinner, Lu Shu feels a disturbance related to the awakened near a bridge, prompting him to investigate. Upon arriving at the scene, he finds a group of hooded figures facing off against awakened individuals with superpowers. The situation seems to be spiraling out of control until suddenly the police arrive just in time to save the awakened, who were on the verge of being defeated by the hooded figures. Seeing the chaos and the intervention of the authorities, Lu Shu realizes that the danger is greater than he had imagined. Lu Shu orders Xiaoyu to return home amid the chaos. Although she wants to stay, she yields to her brother's insistence. Understanding the danger, as she leaves, Lu Shu deduces that the hooded figures belong to the Celestial Network, whose aim is to raid a residence filled with awakened individuals. A police officer attempts to intervene, but is attacked by the awakened. Just when all seems lost, a young member of the Celestial Network appears and, with great skill, stops the officer with a sword. However, the strongest of the awakened decides to confront Lu Shu. While others try unsuccessfully to capture him, Lu Shu struggles to stay safe. Eventually, the awakened crosses paths with Lu Shu, who activates his power field and with precision overwhelms the enemy. Lu Shu quickly escapes, knowing he shouldn't stay any longer. Back home, Lu Shu deactivates his power field, but unease overwhelms him. He decides to investigate further and heads out with Xiaoyu. On their way, they encounter Mr. Lai, whom they invite to eat and enjoy the panoramic view of the city, though he declines the invitation. Lu Shu asks Xiaoyu to activate her power to monitor the surroundings. Everything is calm, so they decide to return to the battle site. There, Lu Shu asks Xiaoyu if she can sense the residual energy of the fallen. Xiaoyu, turning serious, confirms she can. Lu Shu asks her to absorb the energy of the powerful awakened to study it, but Xiaoyu discovers she doesn't have enough energy and becomes frustrated. She asks her brother to take her to eat, reminding him of his promise to Mr. Lai. While they eat, Lu Shu advises Xiaoyu to conceal her powers. In a low voice, he tells her that if they had said they were orphans, their lives would be easier. Xiaoyu cries, fearing she might be sent back to the orphanage, but Lu Shu reassures her, promising to work hard to secure a place of their own. The next day, the Celestial Network discusses the appearance of Lu Shu, a new powerful player who could have a bright and dangerous future. Meanwhile, Lu Shu continues selling stinky tofu and takes advantage of the situation, earning more rage points. During the night, a stealthy man steals savings from various hiding spots in her room. Meanwhile, Xiaoyu, awakened by an inner instinct, excitedly approaches her brother, showing him that she has recreated the man he defeated. Lu Shu, momentarily stunned, believes the man is real. Concerned, he asks Xiaoyu if she controls her abilities. She assures him that she does, but he warns her not to use them at home. Xiaoyu reveals that she can see the recreated man's memories and informs Lu Shu about the whereabouts of the stolen money. Although she suggests retrieving it, Lu Shu stops her, explaining that this is not the right path and that he is saving up to buy a house in the future. Reluctantly, Xiaoyu agrees and goes to sleep. The next morning, rumors about the confrontation between the awakened individuals and the Celestial Network flood the school. Impatient, Lu Shu interrupts his classmates and Jiang Shui, intrigued, asks him about the blessed land. Jiang Shui explains that it is a sacred place where practitioners harvest powers and mentions spirit stones, valuable items granted by the Celestial Network essential for advancing in power cultivation. Meanwhile, the Celestial Network continues to evade the awakened. At school, students gather to welcome the new headmaster, Lai Yixiao, who informs Lu Shu that he has received news about the stolen money, hinting that someone reported it. In the auditorium, a visibly anxious Lai Yixiao steps onto the stage and announces that he will be in charge of a special group of students undergoing advanced training, including Lu Shu, who is awarded 2 spirit stones, acknowledging his potential. After class, Lu Shu consults Jiang Shui about the real value of the spirit stones. Jiang Shui suggests selling them on the black market, but Lu Shu decides to use them to charge his mobile phone. He reflects on how this small gain brings them one step closer to buying a house. When he arrives home, he finds Xiaoyu and Mr. Lai studying with their aunt, who has prepared something delicious to eat, while Lai Yixiao unexpectedly shows up. That night, Lu Shu reveals to Xiaoyu that they have saved enough money to buy a house, leaving her stunned and crying with joy. In the afternoon, Lu Shu receives a call from one of his classmates, informing him that they must be on the truck at 7 o'clock sharp. Without wasting time, Lu Shu sends a message to Xiaoyu to reassure her, telling her that everything is in order. On the trucks, the atmosphere is charged with anticipation. Jiang Shubi informs everyone that their destination is a set of mysterious ruins of extraterrestrial origin, where the formation center, an artifact of incalculable power, is located. Upon arriving at the camp near the ruins, the students head to the makeshift dining hall. Liu Li mocks Lu Shu's poverty, but he ignores it. However, when an arrogant man enters looking for a seat, Lu Shu firmly slaps him and sits back down. The camp leader asks who is responsible, but no one confesses. Later, Jiang Shui suggests that Lu Shu practice in the ruins later, and always eager to improve, he prepares to train. However, when he notices a man contemplating the mountains, he decides to postpone it. Instead of training, he opts to annoy his classmate to earn more points. The next day, Lu Shu checks his progress and finds that he has no signal on his mobile phone to send a message to his sister, which worries him. In the dining hall, he receives 2 extra portions of chicken and a preferential seat, but chooses to sit with his friend, remaining true to his humility. Throughout the day, he continues his mission to annoy the group leader, who eventually flees to the top of the forest, but Lu Shu relentlessly chases after him. The following day, the camp becomes friendlier towards Lu Shu. However, the calm is shattered when Liu Lai, who is at level F, challenges Lu Shu to a fight. A supervisor intervenes, stating that the competition must be through strength. Lu Shu emerges victorious, impressing the supervisor with his skill. Suddenly, a mysterious fog emanates from the ruins and a siren sounds, signaling immediate evacuation. Lu Shu and his companions attempt to escape, but the fog envelops them, trapping them inside the ruins. Amid the chaos, a skeleton emerges and attacks Lu Shu, who defeats it by splitting it in 2, but the parts keep moving. He decides to duplicate it, which finally stops it. Continuing his exploration, Lu Shu faces more skeletons and monsters, defeating them with skill. His companions, impressed by his bravery, wish to stay with him, but Lu Shu, determined to help others, leaves them an axe and presses on in this dangerous place. Lu Shu advances through hostile terrain, facing zombies armed with axes. Although he defeats them, fatigue overwhelms him, and he seeks refuge before nightfall. While exploring, he discovers a flare launched by a man from the Celestial Network named Chang Huanyu. Cleverly, Lu Shu introduces himself under the false name Liu Lai and pretends to collaborate, but soon becomes suspicious of the man's true intentions. The tension escalates when a group of zombies approaches, forcing them to flee. Lu Shu deceives the man and leaves him behind, but the man catches up to him again. They both reach a mountain, where Lu Shu pretends to fall asleep to thwart the man's attempts to steal his sword. The next day, Lu Shu lies to the man, saying he is going to find some stinky tofu. After eating, he returns and offers the tofu to the man, describing its origin in a repulsive manner. Furious, the man attacks Lu Shu, but is easily defeated. Continuing his journey, Lu Shu finds an apple tree in a forest. While picking apples, he is attacked by territorial squirrels, but manages to escape with a few fruits. Thirsty, Lu Shu stops at a stream to drink water, but is soon pursued by a pack of wolves. Although injured, he quickly heals by eating a fruit from his roulette, demonstrating his survival abilities. In a moment of quick thinking, he removes his shoes to run faster and manages to escape, reaching the group of students he had helped earlier. The students, surprised by his return, invite him to stay, assuming he must be very powerful. However, true to his solitary nature, Lu Shu decides to rest alone for the night and then continue on his way. As he eats the apples he gathered, the students watch him enviously, creating tension within the group. A careless mistake causes one of them to drop an axe. Lu Shu picks it up without a word and continues on his way, leaving the students and the growing tension behind. Lu Shu, walking calmly, encounters a zombie on horseback who attacks him with a spear, wielding it with impressive skill. Recognizing the value of the spear, Lu Shu decides it would be an excellent addition to his collection. However, before he can act, a group of mountain monsters surrounds him, all armed. Without hesitation, Lu Shu knocks the rider off, seizes the spear, and flees at full speed. The monsters try to stop him with arrows, but they miss. From a nearby camp, a group of people observes the scene. Seeing the rider without a spear, they mistake him for the leader of the zombies and attempt to take him down with a sniper shot. Although they manage to bring him down, the other monsters continue as if nothing happened. Confused, the observers fire arrows, scattering the monsters. Amid the confusion, they wonder why that zombie didn't have a spear. The answer comes when Lu Shu reappears, knocking down another rider and stealing his spear. The onlookers, astonished, whisper about his skill, believing he must be at least level D to survive these encounters. As Lu Shu continues on his way, his mind drifts to memories of his childhood in the orphanage, where he used to hide in trees during games. Returning to the present, he considers trading the spears for magic stones to make money. But before he can decide, he is surrounded by another group of mounted monsters. Without losing confidence, Lu Shu confronts them and defeats them all, demonstrating his prowess as a warrior. Elsewhere, Xiaoyu at home finds some crisps but decides to save them for her brother, showing her affection. Back in the ruins, a group of teachers and students track Lu Shu. Finding the remains of the riders, they recognize his strength and see him as a potential ally in their mission against the zombies. Just then, they receive news of another group of riders chasing someone and plan to confront them. Meanwhile, Lu Shu reaches the top of a hill to meditate and refine his power. He eats a special flower that regenerates him and increases his strength. The group of teachers spies on the riders, ready to execute their plan. But before they can act, spears rain down from the sky, taking out several zombies. It's Lu Shu making a dramatic entrance, attacking the remaining monsters with all the weapons at his disposal. He faces the enemies alone, displaying incredible skill that leaves everyone in awe. As the students and teachers approach, Lu Shu calmly warns them that the weapons are his and that he's not willing to share them. Lu Shu, ever cunning, begins collecting the spears from the fallen riders. As he works, someone approaches him, addressing him by his real name. Lu Shu calmly assures them that he doesn't want anyone taking the spears. "Don't worry," they respond, and he continues, trading the weapons for goods ranging from matches to worn-out blankets. After the bartering, the group follows Lu Shu, who leads them with a song. As they move through the ruins, the air grows colder, and Lu Shu, curious, asks the leader if they suffered many losses. They recount that only the brave from the Red Flame Network sacrificed themselves to save the students. Hours later, they decide to set up camp. Lu Shu hands out slices of apple, but deliberately leaves some without any to observe their reactions. A desperate man offers his watch in exchange for apples for the other hungry groups. Just then, the gust of wind extinguishes the campfires and demonic spirits emerge. Lu Shu's inner sword reacts, and upon sensing its terrifying presence, the ghosts decide to flee. The next day, they reach the center of the ruins and encounter other survivors who speak of a mysterious level of fighter named Ko Kingshi. Lu Shu resumes his spear trading business but is interrupted by the Celestial Network calling him to a meeting. Zhang Yutang, a level C, appears before Lu Shu and Xiao Kingshi, congratulating them on their skills and highlighting them above the rest of the group. The supervisor inspects a cave and with dramatic flair threatens to blast from the heart to the ground to measure its depth. While they wait, Lu Shu checks his power menu and discovers there are spies among them, but he doesn't seem concerned. Suddenly, an explosion shakes the area, and everyone sees a massive tree fall, from which the director, believed to be dead, emerges. Seizing the moment, the group gathers fruits from the tree and distributes them. Jian Shu comes running towards Lu Shu, and after exchanging stories, Lu Shu gives him one of his spears. Observing this, a nearby member asks for a spear, promising to pay later. However, Lu Shu, with his sharp intuition, realizes that this person is one of the spies. Later, the director announces that the next day they will descend into the depths of the ruin to face great challenges. As night falls, everyone prepares to sleep except for Lu Shu, who continues to check his power menu. The spies see an opportunity to escape, but Lu Shu stops one of them, the same person who had asked for a spear. Taking advantage of the situation, Lu Shu demands 70% of whatever they find in the cave. The spy, desperate but not entirely so, refuses and starts to attack. The battle begins when the spy strikes, but Lu Shu dodges effortlessly, then lets out a shout that awakens the entire camp. The director, ever vigilant, responds immediately, tossing the spy into the well without hesitation. It turns out this was a master plan to unmask the infiltrated spies. With the enemy exposed, the director decides there's no time to lose. That very night, they must descend into the well to reclaim the training center. The director swiftly gathers his trusted team and selects the top students for the critical mission, while the others remain above to protect the camp. Before departing, the director approaches Lu Shu, intrigued by his collection of jewels, and proposes a deal to explore other ruins in exchange for protection. Although Lu Shu appears uninterested, they eventually agree to split whatever they find equally. A girl uses her ability to create a ladder, allowing everyone to descend into the cave. As they go down, the cave lights up with a green glow, activating Lu Shu's internal sword, but he controls it before it causes any trouble. Upon reaching the bottom, they find the bodies of the dead traitors and move towards an ancient temple where thousands of ghosts emerge ready to attack. A fierce battle ensues, but none of the ghosts dare touch Lu Shu, whose internal sword suppresses them with terrifying force. A traitor reappears in the form of a spirit, fueled by the dark energy of his fallen comrades, and attacks the group. Lu Shu, always prepared, senses the danger thanks to his internal sword and defends himself with his spear with great skill. Everyone is astonished, but Lu Shu, revealing little, randomly points out a spot for the director's sharpshooter to fire at, and surprisingly, he hits the mark. The situation escalates when thousands of zombie warriors emerge from the temple, advancing towards them. The director faces off against the zombie leader, while the students and teachers bravely battle the undead. Lu Shu takes down several enemies, but in a moment of distraction, an arrow is aimed at him. His companion Cao Qingji saves him at the last second. The battle rages on, but no one dares approach Lu Shu, allowing him to delve deeper into the temple in search of something valuable. Inside the temple, Lu Shu feels a special connection with his sister Xiaoyu, realizing her anger. In that moment of distraction, the ghost of the spy reappears and attacks him from behind, but Lu Shu's internal sword acts on its own, defending him and expelling the spirit from the temple, earning him more points in the process. Lu Shu decides to explore the temple and opens a door that reveals clay soldiers. Tempted by the spears they hold, he takes one, causing the soldiers to come to life. However, Lu Shu calmly draws out his internal sword, and the terrified soldiers return to their original positions. Seizing the opportunity, he collects more spears, earning coins. Meanwhile, his group continues battling zombies. Cao Qingji plays a key role in the fight, while the director faces off against the zombie leader. Although he manages to seize the power spear, he discovers that it is not the training center. At the same time, Lu Shu finds the seal of the ruin on the altar, attracting the ghost leader. Upon confronting him, the training center enters his body, causing the temple and everything else to begin fading away. Lu Shu finds himself alone in a void until he is transported back to the camp, where everything seems to have returned to normal. Jiang Shui desperately searches for his friend and finds no trace of him until later when Lu Shu returns safe and sound. With a smile, he hands over his weapons and prepares to go home. On the way, he reunites with his sister Xiaoyu, who, upon seeing him, is overjoyed, and they decide to go get something to eat. Back at home, Lu Shu shows Xiaoyu 2 orbs he has been keeping, one dark and one light. He explains their functions, but an experiment goes wrong, which changes Xiaoyu's mood. However, she cheers up when she receives the fruits Lu Shu picked. Soon, a squirrel appears, claiming the fruits, and Xiaoyu, enchanted, decides to adopt it. Later, Lu Shu examines the seal of the ruin in his room. He is spiritually transported to a place where he discovers that he can control the power of the city and reopen the ruins at any time. His meditation is interrupted by Xiaoyu, who, concerned, finds him in the room. Lu Shu reassures her, promising that their lives will be different. Meanwhile, the leader of the Red Flame informs that Lai Yixiao suspects his spy has the seal, but has not yet been activated. They decide to modify the curriculum to include only those capable of facing great dangers. Back with Lu Shu and Xiaoyu, the siblings enjoy their time together after the great adventure while watching the fireworks.